And for a long time, we were like, fat is bad.
Women are overwhelmed with the information they receive.
I think there's a lot of diet culture speak out there that has us focusing on calorie counts and grams of fat. And we sort of lose the plot. And we forget that we're individuals because a lot of what's being put out there is one-size-fits-all messaging. Sometimes it's based in evidence. Sometimes there's research that backs it. But the research isn't necessarily speaking to you and your life. So we should always have protein at all of our meals. There should be a sizable amount of fiber at all of our meals, as well as a healthy fat that's included on the plate at all times. These are essential to whole health. They're essential to fertility health and digestive health. This is the lens in which we should be approaching our meals, is to make sure that we are including a variety of these macronutrients at all of our meals. We have the balanced plate tool.
Where do you see women going wrong when they try to eat healthy? Welcome to 60 Minutes with a Woman. Today, registered dietitian Aderet Hoch joins us to break down what women's nutrition really looks like when it's actually designed for us. Aderet, welcome and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Sarah.
All right. Well, let's dive into your own story. Tell us more about where you're from and what inspired you to dedicate your life to dietetics and nutrition.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm from New York. I grew up in a big family. I have 5 siblings, and 3 of them are my sisters. So a lot of women in one household, very loud, very chaotic. But also part of like growing up in a big Jewish family, food is such a big part of our culture, and it just kind of all made sense for how I ended up where I am, which is as a dietitian working in women's health. I always say I grew up, my mom was either pregnant or breastfeeding. Me and my sisters were all going through adolescence at the same time. The conversation around women's health was just always a big part of my upbringing. And I always just loved food. I call myself a foodie. I don't know if that's still a term that people use, but I still use it. And just the combination of learning about being in love with food and growing up around all these strong women and surrounded by all these conversations, it just like all kind of came to me working as a dietitian, helping women, with their health and their food and everything. And yeah, that's how it kind of went down.
I love it. And especially because you specified how much women were present in your life and that it was a topic that you talked about often with your family. And I want to ask you, when did you realize then that this was your path? You really wanted to be involved in women nutrition. I'm going to call it like that because this is really what you focus on.
Yeah. Well, as a teenager, like most teenagers, and your body is changing. I remember like going to the pediatrician with me, my sister, and we were both, I wouldn't say we were overweight. I think that's maybe dramatic from a clinical sense, but our bodies were changing. And the doctor said, if you're interested in going to see a nutritionist, like I can give you a referral. And my sister was like, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, okay, whatever my sister's doing, I want to do it too. And so we both went. And it was such an impactful experience for me, learning things that I had never learned before. It wasn't taught to me in school.
Right.
And maybe it was given to me in the home from my parents, but not in this very like clinical way, in this very structured way of like how to eat well, how to take care of yourself. And it was very eye-opening for me. And it really exposed me to this other side of food and health that I was like, and I kind of just fell in love with it because I was like, wow, what a way to help people and approach things. And I'm a middle child. And so, being able to help people and work with people and, it's just like, I'll say it's in my DNA in a lot of ways. So, yeah.
No, I love that. And this is from a personal, this is a personal question, but I realized there was a major difference between dietetics and nutrition. And I'd love for you to explain that to us.
So I always like to explain it in that, like, there's this very just line about licensure. It's not so dramatic in the way it's like science or education necessarily, but in order to be a dietitian, you have to go through a certain level of schooling and you have to do a dietetic internship. And I would say it's much more aligned with the medical field versus becoming a nutritionist, which also comes with a set of education and exams and things like that. But it's not a clinical term. I shouldn't say it's not a clinical term. It is a clinical term, but it's just a different licensure. And so it's really more of a certificate for a nutritionist versus like a licensed dietitian. That's really what it comes down to. It's all, just language.
And when people come to you, can they expect to receive the same type of service than if they had to go to a nutritionist, or do you offer something different?
So I can't say for sure that they wouldn't get the same level of care. I think that really depends on the nutritionist you're going to and the dietitian you're going to. Um, from the perspective of, let's say, again, more of like that traditional Western medicine,
Hmm.
you're more likely to be referred out to a dietitian and have insurance cover a session with a dietitian versus working with a certified nutritionist.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I
Yeah,
didn't know that. All right.
yeah.
Um, with your, we spoke about the fact that you are into women's health, and there is something very specific to your work because you speak a lot about hormonal health and fertility. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, for sure. So when I think of women's health, I really think about fertility health. I really equate the two. And the reason being that one of the, I mean, fertility health is true for men and women. There's no
Okay.
differentiation in that sense. But for women, we menstruate and we have this monthly cycle that really aligns with a lot of what's going on with our overall health. And it's kind of like having this like monthly doctor's appointment almost where it's like what's going on and we have this kind of check system for us. And it tells us a lot about what's going on in other areas. It's very connected. Hormone health and GI health, fertility health and hormonal health, everything is like so interconnected in the body. And one thing that I always like to say when we're talking about the various systems is the endocrine system or the hormonal system is really running in the background of everything. And when we think about the body, we often think about it in different parts. Like this is our cardiovascular system and our nervous system and our
Right.
digestive system. And we think about it in parts. Whereas our endocrine system really takes the whole body into account. And I think that tells us a lot about like our whole health. And so I'll often come from the angle when I'm working with women of focusing on their fertility health and their hormonal health to help look at their whole health.
And it's even more than that because you add the nutrition side of the health rights aspect to the body and the fertility and the hormonal health all together combined. When did you discover that this is what you wanted to dedicate your life to?
I think that's a really good question. I don't know if there's a specific moment in time, but through all of my schooling, through all of my personal experience, just through my own interests, it just became very clear to me over time that this is like really where I feel like there's can be such an impact in the world and for women and for just general overall health. I think there's a lot of diet culture speak out there that has us focusing on calorie counts and grams of fat. And we sort of lose the plot a little bit. We forget why we're doing all of that. We forget where it's all rooted in and what we really should be paying attention to, what metrics we should care about, because we're so focused on being able to wear this, piece of clothing or to be able to eat this piece of cake and like I said, we lose the plot. We lose the reason
Yeah.
behind everything and we can refocus on, the physiology, the biology and understanding why we want to take care of ourselves and how we should take care of
Right.
ourselves. We're able to, I think, have just, more impact on ourselves and the world.
I think that for most people, food is fuel. We don't see it as a way to improve our health as a whole. We see it as I need food for calories, basically. So when you want to lose weight, you tap into reducing your calorie intake, and you don't realize that you could deprive your body from essential things. And indeed, what matters the most is like getting to that dress, right? Have that size down this outfit so you can look sexy in it. I mean, I'm speaking mostly for women, but I think there is just not enough awareness, and this is one of the reasons I really wanted us to get together on an episode to bring more awareness around that topic. Is looking good is great, but feeling good also depends on what we eat. So. I mean, I prepare. I send them to you. I prepared a lot of questions related to that topic. So, do you feel with your own patient that women are overwhelmed with the information they receive regarding food?
I think there's a lot of mixed messaging. that can then become overwhelming, where it's like,
Okay.
this person's telling me I'm supposed to wait until 11 o'clock to eat breakfast, and this person's telling me not to have coffee
Right.
before I eat, and this. And I think there's just a lot of things out there that, get us to the point where we're like, so it's impossible to do it right, right? It makes it feel like that we're never doing it right, that there's always something wrong. And we forget that we're individuals, because a lot of what's being put out there is one size fits all messaging that sometimes is based in evidence. Sometimes there's research that backs it, but the research isn't necessarily speaking to you and your life, and what works for you. And it's not necessarily speaking to, your challenges and your barriers to leading a healthy lifestyle. And if, you have to look at priorities, and you have to figure out what fits me. And I think that that's where the messaging gets confused, because it doesn't feel personalized to us.
That's
And
so
when we're
true.
trying to make something work that doesn't work for us, and then we continue to fail over and over and over again, it can be disheartening. So that's kind
Absolutely
of how I see it.
frustrating. Yes, absolutely. That is so true. You also specialize in hormonal health across all stages of womanhood. When you look at women's health today, what do you feel is the most misunderstood?
Um, I think that in terms of hormonal health specifically, to me, what feels like misunderstood is just feeling like just a complete not understanding. I will say I don't think that there's enough information and evidence and research out there for women, because we're still learning so much. I know the big trend right now is perimenopause and that life stage, and learning about how it affects your hormones and
Is that
what
a
that
trend?
means. Yeah, I see a
Okay.
lot of perimenopause out there right now.
Okay.
And I know that that's like a topic of conversation of when does it
Yeah.
start? What does it look like? And so I think really there's a lot of questions. Some are answered, some are not
Okay.
answered. And how and what and I think also just this idea of like what we can be doing to take care of ourselves hormonally. I think there's also a misconception around, oh, you need to take every supplement on the market, or there's a
That is
special
very true.
diet that's going to hack it, right?
Mm.
As opposed to understanding it from like more of a holistic, food first approach, that doesn't always sound so exciting sometimes. And someone's just telling you, hey, fruits and vegetables are really beneficial.
Mm.
And I know that doesn't always sound so exciting, but the little things have such a big impact. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that awareness ends up being a trend just because it's heavily commercialized. But at the end of the day, it's most definitely, I mean, I personally see it as a great awakening. We haven't spoken about the importance of perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause ever. And then now everybody wants to talk about it because it's a real thing. And I think women has suffered so much. The response to the silence is being now very loud about it because we want you know, the awareness to be brought to every single person out there. And I actually, it's funny because lately I've been having these conversations around perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause, but not around food. So I love that angle as well. And when I specify that you work with women across all stages of womanhood, it's because really fertility for you starts at the adolescence, right?
yeah.
You work as well with younger girls. It's their whole life that they need to be taking care of their fertility, their hormonal health, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I call it fertility through family life.
Okay.
And it's to really encompass the whole life cycle, to really look at things from the lens of, when I say family life, I'm talking about both the parents and the kids,
Yes.
right? What's happening at the parents level is affecting the kids level. And then that comes all the way into their fertility years, or working with somebody, let's say in their like late 20s, 30s, focusing on their fertility health and working with them through that time of pregnancy, postpartum, and then raising kids.
Right.
It's kind of like
Right.
it's all connected in this very cyclical way. And so, yeah, I do work with a wide age range and a wide range of conditions, and I like to quantify it in this way to kind of paint the picture of like, we're a unit. Like everything's
Right.
happening inside this unit, and growing up in a big family, that also I think kind of is how my brain works, of like we're growing up inside of this unit,
Right.
and it's we're all connected in that way. So yeah.
I love it. So all stages are very important.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Because I feel also that some people wait to be in deficit of something before to realize that they should be acting upon it. You've said also that fertility is the foundation of women's health. When you talk about it, can I ask you, it's the foundation of health, mental health, physical health? In what aspect exactly can we say it's crucial for women in general?
Yeah, so I really come at it from the angle of physical health, being that that's my
Okay.
area of expertise. That, again, the if we are focusing on our fertility health, we are inevitably focusing on our whole health. And they're very interconnected for women, and it gives us an avenue and a focus to come at. A lot of women also were being better at diagnosing things like endometriosis and PCOS, or now
Right.
it's called PMOS. But we're getting better and better at diagnosing these metabolic conditions, these endocrine conditions. And it allows us to it almost just kind of solidifies or validates this way of looking at things, that our hormonal health and our fertility health really do speak a lot to our whole health, and especially when it comes to nutrition for women.
Okay, wonderful. So many women feel like eating has become overwhelming. We spoke about that. There are too many rules, too many diets, too many opinions. Um, why is it so confusing right now? Was it better before? Is there like an overload of information right now, or are we just disconnected from cooking altogether and understanding our foods?
So I feel like it's two different questions for me.
Okay.
Like, for sure, it's more confusing right now than it's ever been. And the reason being is that there is a trend on there. I should say there's access to information through social media. Um, and there's a trend of wellness influencing where we're just bombarding people on their algorithm with health information and lifestyle information and nutrition
Right.
information. And it's not always coming from reputable sources. And so it can feel really confusing. There's the obvious trend of, I experienced this worked for me, so this is going to work for you, and people are very attracted to that. And it's very enticing versus coming from a healthcare professional saying, this is what the research is saying, this is what the evidence says. We want to find what works for you, and a kind of a different approach. So that is where it can be really confusing of, like,
Right.
social media just so easily accessible with so much information, and not being able to really identify what is accurate and what's not accurate. And then you have the other problem, which is, that you kind of brought it up about the kitchens, which is that, I always say this, come find me in 20 years from now and ask me if most people have kitchens in their home, and I'll probably say no. That's the sad truth, is that
Yeah.
we're just now living in a time where, in order to eat, you do not need to have a kitchen. One is not relying on the other anymore.
Right.
And so we are just a scroll, 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 click, click away from a meal sitting at our door. And so we don't need a kitchen in our home. And there will be people who may not find having a kitchen to be something that they need. And that creates a lot of disconnect from our food.
Right.
I always say we used to be hunters and gatherers, right? And that was one end of the spectrum, where our entire existence was all about getting food and eating food. And that was literally why we were here. Versus now, where we've gone so far on the other side of the spectrum, where we don't need to do anything to eat food. And we would really benefit from finding a way to kind of move a little bit back down the spectrum to somewhere in the middle, where it's like, yeah, getting food and eating food doesn't have to be our whole existence, but
Right.
it also doesn't have to be nothing. And so there's something there where, if we could get reconnected, we could make such a difference in our health.
I love this. So people were more connected to their food before, and now society has just distanced us completely to the way we eat, or even the value we associate food with. Right? It's okay. That's a very strong statement, and I love that.
Okay.
It's a wake up call. It is really, because
Yeah.
we kind of get carried by the currents, and we don't realize how fast we lose basic and essential things that we need to survive, like you mentioned, but thrive as well. Um, where do you see women going wrong when they try to eat healthy?
I think there's a lot of
I
extreme.
love the smile there, because like I'm ready for that question.
I think there's a lot of extreme, right? There's this lot of like this all or nothing thinking. That's
Okay.
I think, and I think that that's true for men and women. I don't think it's specific to women, but since that's my main audience, that's who I'm working with. I see a lot of all or nothing, of like, okay, and I love the motivation, the determination to want to like do better for yourself, do better for your family. Like it's so beautiful to watch. But I like to kind of bring people back a little bit and say, okay, great. But that's not life. And it's not realistic to say it's going to be perfect every single day and that you're only
Right.
going to eat kale salads and et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, there's too much other things going on in life. We don't live in a bubble. We don't live in a lab, right? We're humans out in the world and our environments make a difference. And so I think it's that all or nothing thinking that really gets us tripped up. And we
Okay.
would really benefit from an approach where we're thinking about this middle ground between I'm either doing it or not doing it, but there's something in the middle where it's like I am doing it enough to take care of myself or to the best of my abilities. I like when my patients come into their session and they grade themselves and they go, I would say the last couple of weeks was a B plus or something like that. And I don't even ask them. They just do that on their own. I've had a lot of patients do that, and I really enjoy it because it tells me a lot about how they're looking at things. And they say like, I would grade my last 2 weeks like a B plus, and I'll be like, and they're like, and I feel really good about that. And I'm like, great, that I feel really good about that too. And so just kind of this idea that it doesn't need to be this or that.
Right. It's great. I know a lot of women will be able to resonate with what you just said because there is just this perfect picture that we are trying to, relate to, connect with, or literally, be. And it's true. Sometimes you just have to go with the flow. Life is there is a lot going on, and you cannot always have this perfect meal. And eating out is okay, but indeed, if you find a ratio of homemade food, healthy one, by the way, too, not just frozen one, and then and then sometimes give your self some slack. It's fine as well. It's better than going all in or nothing. It's I want to ask, I'm just going to ask a question now to the audience, now that we are here in the podcast and we have a better understanding of where we are going with this conversation. I want to ask everybody listening to think about for a moment, of how many times have you started a diet and you felt in control only to end up more confused than when you began? And this is, I think, the question that I'm asking everybody here is really to see how they digest the information that they are receiving regarding the food. Because I'm the same way. I will, if I have to share a little bit of my own experience, I had a major depression and put on a lot of weight and just went no carbs for about 3 years and really limiting sugar intake and all of that. But I felt weak all the time, and it was challenging. So my mood was terrible, but then I felt good in my body, and that's all that mattered to me. And on the opposite, after COVID, I just wanted to eat all the time. I felt tired, exhausted. I'm guessing now this is the virus, but got back to the weight I had lost, few years prior to that. And actually, I was about to give up. I was like, I'm going to give up. It's always about each time that something happens, I take it on food. Food makes me comfortable or uncomfortable, and at least I feel like I have some power over my physique or even like silhouette. And at the end of the day, now I'm like in the middle, and I'm hoping this is going to stay like that. But it's just, you always feel worse than when you began. This was a feeling that was omnipresent for me. It's like, I want to reach my goals, but I just don't know how. And I cook, by the way. I almost never eat out. So I think it's possible to do it even when you're trying to stay consistent in the kitchen. And so let's go now to the questions related to that for you. You work with women, you mentioned, with who have PCOS, endometriosis, irregular cycles. Do you think that most women are taught to understand their cycle as a health indicator?
So I actually don't think women are taught the right way to look at their
Okay.
cycle. I'm a millennial. I'm an older millennial, and I definitely grew up in the culture of like, ew, I got my period. Like I definitely grew up in that in that culture as a teenager, as a tween, of kind of this like very anti-menstruation type of conversation. Even though not in my home, my mom was like very positive about it and very supportive, and it wasn't taboo. And me and my sisters were very open about it in front of my dad and my brothers. Like
Really?
it
Okay.
was never spoken poorly inside my home, but definitely like amongst friends and my social life, like there's definitely that conversation. And I think that it's not taught to you, and it's taught to you in like, oh, you're becoming a woman, that your body is changing way, and not taught to you from the way of like your body is communicating something to you, and
Right.
this is what it means. These are the 4 phases, and these are some of the symptoms you may experience, and these are the things to look for. And we're not taught it from that clinical way. And the conversation is very much still in this like womanhood, which again, there's nothing wrong with that, but it completely takes away from like you looking at your cycle as a cycle of like, what does it mean? What's happening with you hormonally? What should you be paying attention to? How should you be taking care of yourself? And I think we would really benefit from education like that, because I think it would help women, feel a little less surprised. I feel
Right.
like a
Right.
little less surprised. I think there's a lot of like, I love the like, I just cried for 24 hours and then the next day I got my period and I was like, oh, okay, right. That kind of like rhetoric that's out there. And I'm like, it's cute, but it's communicating something to you, which was like, there's a symptom that you're experiencing and it should tell you something about your cycle. And there's a lot of benefit from tracking our cycles, and seeing all the symptoms we're experiencing, because we can learn a lot about what's going on with our body. So, yeah.
And you also adjust food according to your cycle, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, Especially like, I mean, just from simply, before you're menstruating, your luteal phase, you might really start to have cravings for things that are like, high sugar, high salt. You also might be more hungry because your body is
Right.
preparing to menstruate. And so your body might need more. And so just those things alone can tell you a lot about how you should be taking care of yourself in those days. And you might feel a lot lighter during your follicular phase right after your period. You might feel a lot lighter, might not be as hungry, maybe to eat a little lighter, right? So there's just like a lot we can just get from like how our body is reacting to where we are in our cycle.
So back to the diet conversation, you cannot follow a diet every day the same way because your body goes through different phases.
Yeah, which I think says a lot about dieting in general, and
Okay.
diet culture, and how there's this expectation that we're going to be the exact same person in the exact same body every single day. And that's not true for women, and it's not true for men either. And I think that we should, again, it's that one size fits all messaging versus that like individualized approach of really paying attention to who you are and what you're experiencing.
And the approach can change depending on the time of the day, the month, right? The week, the
Absolutely.
month, right? And
Yeah.
depending on the stage you are in your life. Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's that deep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um what are the signs that a woman's relationship with food is no longer working for her body? That's perfect because we're bouncing on the previous question with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, relationship with food work is relevant at any stage of life.
Okay.
Everybody has it. I mean, I think where I see it hit the most is as women are, in their late 30s, heading into their 40s, and they're seeing their body change. I always say a changing body is a healthy body. So there's nothing wrong with the body changing. But they see things like not looking like they did when they were 22, not bouncing
All right.
back, after in postpartum, first kid to third kid, right? There's a lot of things that come. And, I think the most common line I hear is, I never had issues with my weight. I never had to think about what I was eating. And now all of a sudden,
Yeah.
my body is changing. I have to pay attention to what I'm eating. I've never had to do this before. And there's a scramble. And this is why I say to people, your relationship with food matters no matter who you are and what body you're experiencing, because that is just the way it is. We need to pay attention to what we're eating. We need to be mindful eaters. We need to know how we relate to food, no matter who we are. I also like to say that nobody is immune from body image. Nobody is immune from it. It doesn't have to be, am I overweight or am I normal weight, right? This isn't necessarily a weight issue. Body image can be, I don't like my teeth.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Body image has a lot of different definitions and it's all related to appearance. And so to me, it's all connected. Relationship with food, relationship with body. It's relevant always. And when we quote unquote no longer know if it's working for our body is when it comes up for us. When
All
all of
right.
a sudden we are thinking about it in a way we never thought about it before.
Okay, so if you start having the wrong thought about your the relationship you have with your food, it might be because it's not working for you anymore.
Yeah.
Going back to the diet part, there's also, I mean, I've been speaking a lot about this lately. If the listeners have been following, they know GLP-1 medication has become something that is omnipresent also in society, but in the podcast, because it's true, we see it everywhere now. And those medications, the diets, and everything in between, what patterns do you notice when women come to you after all of that? If there is one, by the way, a common one.
Um, I think there's not one pattern.
Okay.
I think it really depends. The GLP-1 medications, I think, is a different conversation in that, like, I think people are coming, before they take the medication out of fear of like, what is this experiencing going to be like while
Good.
they're on the medication?
That's
Yeah,
good.
I
Yeah.
I appreciate people's thoughtfulness around it. While people are on the medication, it's like, okay, I've lost weight, I gained that goal, but now I want to take care of myself, right? And trying to learn what their relationship with food is with an appetite that's being, managed through a medication. Um, I think for women who have gone in and out of diets and have dieted for many, many years, I think the common theme that, comes up is, I relate food to numbers, right? I relate food
Okay.
to this is X amount of calories. And there's just loss of joy. So like a little bit of a loss of joy around food, and it's burnout. I would think the dieting culture
Mhm.
really, like, the pattern that I see a lot is just burnout around it. And not necessarily seeing the results that they thought they would. It's like I'm burnt
Right.
out, I'm not enjoying my food, and I'm not seeing the results. And so it comes that's how I feel like I'll most often see people come to me through that. So,
Okay. So
yeah.
you would say that people who are taking medications are maybe more conscious of the efforts they're supposed to be making on the long term, whereas the diet is more something difficult to control because you're not obtaining the results right away.
Yeah, so I think for the medications, when people are on the medications, they they're seeing the results because it's being aided through the medication most of
Right.
the
Right.
time. And I think there's more just like, okay, so if this is not the goal anymore, right? To weigh this to look like this is not the goal anymore, what am I doing? Right. And there's this,
Mm,
this other questions start to pop up of like, okay, well, my cholesterol's high, or, I want to now, start gaining muscle. And right, there's other things that start to come up. Like it's almost like you cleared away that weight loss
right.
goal. And now all the other goals start to kind of pop up. Um, and then, or a lot of the times it's relationship with food is many times the goal in that case. Whereas with the dieting, sometimes they saw results, but then maybe as they got older or time passed, the results started to, either reverse and go in the other direction,
Right.
or just didn't, it just didn't sustain. And so it's like this didn't work, or didn't work the way I thought it would. So I think it really depends, how those things are impacting the
I
person.
love the insight. Thank you.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at it that way, and I appreciate your insight on this because it does make a lot of sense from a mental point of view. How you would, the relationship that you have with food when you lose all the weight versus when you have to work hard for it. So it's great to see the gap between the two. At what point does trying to be healthy actually becomes harmful for a woman?
I think when there's, again, I think it's that like perfectionism around it,
Okay.
right? It's this idea that I need to do everything and anything to get there.
Yes.
Um, there's a lot of eating disorders that come out of, I should say eating disorders and disordered eating that can easily come out of a health journey if not, done in a proper way, guided by a professional. There's just it's very easy to go it's a very slippery slope down to the other direction of going from, I want to reach this goal, to not taking care of yourself properly.
Right.
Yeah.
So true. For a woman who wants to understand what happens to her food inside her body, can you walk us through what lipids, glucides, and proteins are, and how they're processed and used by the female body, and eventually was in relation with the fertility?
Sure. So I don't want to get too,
Not technical, just have
not,
a
yeah, I don't want to get too biochem
I'll tell
level.
you why I actually asked you this question because I
Okay.
was lucky enough to have that class at school,
Okay.
and it helped me a lot understand my food. And in the conversations I have with women, indeed, you spoke about calories.
Hmm.
There is physical exercises, things that are muscle mass. There is a lot of very like trendy hooks that everybody uses, but then what's the groups that you are actually ingesting and how it gets distributed, it's not something that comes up at the top of the conversation, and it's left out altogether sometimes even.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at basically our macronutrients or the nutrients we need the most of, being your protein, your carbohydrates, and your fat. I like to reframe it as protein, fiber, and fat. And this should be the balance of your meals. So we should always have protein at all of our meals. There should be a
Okay.
sizable amount of fiber at all of our meals, as well as a healthy fat that's included on the plate at all times. Um, these are essential to whole health. They're essential to fertility health and digestive health. I mean, this is the lens in which we should be approaching our meals, is to make sure that we are including a variety of these macronutrients at all of our meals. We have the balanced plate tool, which is a helpful way to kind of look at things where a quarter of your plate is coming from protein, a quarter from a grain or a starchy vegetable, and half your plate from plants is always a great, easy to go to tool. If you're ever unsure what proportion things should be on your plate, this is how we are. This is, what we are aiming for. This is providing us with the energy that we need. This is providing us with the fuel that we need. I know we talked about food as fuel. It's helping with muscle preservation through protein. Fiber is going to support your heart health. It's going to support your
Yeah.
digestive health. And healthy fats are such an important part of our hormonal health, acting also as anti-inflammatories for inflammation. And so, there's like 1,000 things I can say on the subject, but focusing on protein, fiber, and fat is always the go-to.
Okay. So lipids are fats, glucides
Mhm.
are sugar,
Mhm.
and proteins, it's basically the meat, fish, and people are very familiar with proteins, so this is
Yeah.
probably easier. Um, why sometimes people see fat or sugar as the enemy, and is it the enemy or not?
So, great question.
Okay.
I don't know how these trends start. I don't
Oh.
I don't know how they trickle down, but we spent many years wanting this idea of like, this is good, this is bad. And for a long time we were like, fat is bad.
Mhm.
And then fat was like, no, we're not bad, sugar's bad. And they're like, okay, great, sugar's bad, right?
Yeah.
And we kind of do this thing, we're always looking for a bad guy. And we kind of got to the point in our nutrition story and history where we're like, we're kind of running out of bad guys. So now we're going to go to the good guys. The good guys are our protein. And we kind of just like keep creating these narratives of good versus bad,
Yeah.
versus looking at everything from the picture of we need everybody. Everybody's important to the party. We need to look at the proportion in which we are eating things. We need to look at the quality of what we are eating, right? So, French fries, really high in fat, not necessarily the best source of fat, right? Or the best quality fat versus, let's say, an avocado, right?
Right.
Straight from the ground, great source of fat, full of other nutrients and fiber, etc. So kind of like looking at things from the lens of quality versus just like, fat is all fat. So
Okay.
there's like a lot of different messaging out there that kind of got us this place where we were so quick to vilify something
Right.
versus saying like everybody has a place on our plate. We just have to figure out what that is.
So we have good quality and less of a good quality of fats and sugars. It doesn't mean that they're the enemy. It means that sometimes some fat and sugars will not serve the health of our body, would just get stored. And this is where we start pulling our hairs, right? It's like,
Yeah.
this is what we don't want, but this is what tastes the best. right?
Exactly.
This is what makes you happy. Dopamine hit right away.
Yep.
Fries, I mean, and I'm from Belgium, so fries, it's like we literally
Yep.
eat fries
Yep.
for every single meal. And plus, we fry it in animal fat. That's the secret of the actual taste of French fries.
There you go.
If
There you go. There's
anybody
the hack.
wondered.
There's the hack.
There's the hack. It's not vegetable oils. It's like animal fat. But that being said, it's with moderation.
Correct.
This is where we're getting at. And again,
Mhm.
we said we don't have to be perfect all the time. We can have, oh, by the way, let's go with the cheat days. I know I'm like going off track, but everybody's
Okay.
also on cheat days, right? So,
Yeah.
what do you think about that? Should we just keep a healthy eating habits all the time, or can we just go bananas once in a while?
So, I understand the concept of the cheat day. I hate the
Okay.
cheat word. I hate the
Okay.
cheat word. Not my favorite word. I think it has a lot of immoral implications there, and
Oh,
it's not
yeah.
immoral to like eat, the foods that you like. So I'm very careful with the words that I use. But with that being said, we should enjoy food. I
Okay.
think part of having food and having what we have out right now, like we should enjoy it and we should have opportunities to experience it in that way. I really approach things from an 80-20 perspective, right?
Okay.
If 80% of the time we're really taking care of ourselves, it allows us for 20% to quote unquote indulge. And that 80 really needs that 20. And actually, that 20 really needs that 80, right? They kind of go
Yeah.
hand in hand. It's really hard to do everything perfectly 100% of the time for anything. It's just not realistic. But if we can say between 60 and 80% of the time, I'm taking care of myself, I'm doing what I need to do to take care of myself, that is giving me opportunities to say, okay, I can indulge every once in a while and really experience food in a different way. So I think I like to think of it as like, not so much, what, but when and how,
Okay.
when it comes to, the quote unquote cheat day.
No, I like 80-20.
Yeah.
Honestly, my whole life has been 80-20. I'm not gonna even lie to you.
Okay.
It's just at some point trying to be 100 all the time, especially for a woman. I'm not gonna speak for men because I think they're a bit more driven when it comes to achieving goals and having results. But for a woman, we need that balance. I feel you in my core when you said that 80-20 feels very doable for women in general. Let's go to the restaurants, you and I right now. Let's order something. And I'm going to tell you what I'm going to order, which is a very typical meal, I'm going to say, when you go out. And you tell me if now this is good or bad. So, and beneficial or not non-beneficial. Let's take it like that because there is no good and bad. I'm ordering pasta, wine, bread, salad, and ice cream for dessert. What do you think about that?
I think that sounds great.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, it's not every day. It's not even every month sometimes. And those sound like delicious foods that you probably really enjoy. And they belong in your life. Again, this comes back to the conversation about relationship with food.
Okay.
If we are giving ourselves opportunity to eat things that we like in at the pace that and the frequency that is right for us, then we're able to foster a really positive relationship with food as a result. Because
Okay.
what ends up happening when we are trying to deprive ourselves of the things that we love, it weighs on us. It weighs on us.
We
We
crave it
struggle, and
after.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we have a harder time being able to do the things we need to do to take care of ourselves because we're so hyper focused on the thing we're not doing. So that meal sounds lovely. And if you ask me what I would do, I would say, how often are you having it?
Okay. Okay. So it's not have it or don't have it. It's how often are you having it? Um, if you had to tweak a little bit the meal that I just told you about, what would you change for a more balanced women's health and hormone minded meal?
I may just add in what's the protein on the plate, right? You have your
Okay.
pasta, which is serving as your carbohydrate, your salad, which is serving as your plants. The bread also serving as a carbohydrate. And I would just say, what kind of protein are you having with this meal, even if it's just something small? So again,
Okay.
just like looking at the balance of it. But again, it's minor in the grand scheme of like, did you enjoy it, and how often are you having it?
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Your approach is very practical and real life focused. What does healthy eating actually looks like for a busy woman? Because now we spoke about a woman going to the restaurant, but what about the busy woman, which is honestly now most women?
Yeah. Um, I think that, for busy women, really what it comes down to is a system.
Okay.
What is your system? It's a big part of the work that I do is helping people, especially families, build their system that supports them, creating that environment that supports them being able to eat well for themselves, take care of themselves, because it comes down to priorities. That's what it comes
Okay.
down to. It comes down to priorities. And the truth is, for our day and age, and for women who are ambitious, have high powered jobs, have families, whatever it is, they need it to, support them so they can do all of those things. But it's not a number one priority by any means.
Mm.
And so, how do you reconcile that? And so, for me, when you come to me and say, How do you eat healthy as a busy woman?" I go, "Let's build your system."
Okay, a system
Yeah.
and when we go with word busy, we also speak about the lack of time, right? So
Hmm.
for many women, food. First of all, there are two things. Food is not only physical; it's also emotional. Especially when you're very busy. There is this that I would like to speak about, and also when do you actually get to how do you build a healthy habit when you really don't have the time?
Yeah. So the emotional side of eating
Okay.
is a separate conversation around, you know what's it connected to, where, how are we going from I'm
Let's say stress,
experiencing.
for example, when you're busy.
Great. So what are your stress management techniques outside of eating, right? How
Okay.
are you managing your overall stress? What are you doing? It's not my area of expertise, so we might end up saying, okay, needs to be taken to therapy or wherever else it belongs. But looking at food as, yeah, we live in a society now where food is so readily available that we can turn to it in an emotional time, stress especially. And we have to accept that reality. But we don't have to turn to food every single time we're stressed, right? There has to be other options available to us for managing our emotions. Um, so first and foremost, support system. Who else is in the home with you? What kinds of support can we implement? So if, let's say, you're a single woman and time is not on your side, you're managing everything. And so you might come and say, "I don't have time to cook. I don't have time to do anything. It's just me." And I go, "Okay, well, what was considered a luxury before is no longer a luxury. You're going to order groceries. Maybe you're going to sign up for some kind of meal planning service, depending obviously on financial constraints, obviously comes into consideration. But like, we change the conversation around what's considered a luxury, right? Where do you need support? Where can you gain support? And that becomes a big part of the system. Also designating time for quote unquote self-care. I always say going to the grocery store is self-care. Buying groceries and putting them in your fridge, that's self-care. We talk about self-care as if it's like fancy candles, bathtub book, right? Self-care is going to the grocery store and stocking your fridge, going to the grocery store, stocking your pantry. That is self-care. And so redefining self-care as part of your system. And then if you're part of a family unit, then, I talk to parents a lot about including their kids and their partner in the process, the food production process. Treat your home like a restaurant. You are feeding multiple people. Multiple people should be involved in the process. You should have everything from a list of inventory to a grocery list to a set menu every single week. And everybody should be involved. Start teaching your kids how to be involved in the food process at a young age. It's have them express what they like, have them start chopping a vegetable, whatever it is. By the time they're teenagers, they're going to say, "Hey, mom, I'm going to take Tuesday and Wednesday nights. That's going to be the nights I make dinner." Right? That being the ultimate goal. So I think the first step in building your system is, where can I gain support? Trying to do everything yourself, I think, is where we get tripped up and where we easily end up in the route of Uber Eats very often.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm all for that. I love it. What a
Okay.
great tip. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Especially creating this bonding family time where a lot of mothers find themselves just like like teenager will eat chips and like Coke and just like that's it. That was their meal. They would enjoy very much having a teenager that can feed himself or herself, first of all, but also maybe, the family and do that together. That's really great tip. I love it. You focus a lot on helping women, and we just spoke about that, about rebuilding their relationship with food. We mentioned a little more about what a process looked like. Do you want to tell us more about your program? What can this is for everybody, but let's speak about women. What can they get from working with you?
So absolutely. So the process that I follow is awareness, action, maintenance.
Okay.
That's the trajectory we are going on. Awareness is where everything starts because at the end of the day, when we get tripped up on our health journey, we want to be able to go back and look at our notes, so to speak. We want to be
Yes.
reminded of what we learned. And I know a lot of the times when you start working with a dietitian or really any specialist, you're like, tell me what to do. I want to just do the action. This is what I'm struggling with. Tell me the solution. And that's very much how we get into our minds. But when you walk in my door, I say, okay, I love your motivation. I love how excited you are to get started. We're getting there. We first need to learn. There's a lot we need to learn. And we need to get really into our life. What is going on? And we need to build that awareness around habits, around what we're struggling with, where the gaps are, where the challenges are. We need to live a little bit. And inevitably, usually, there is a wall that we hit during awareness
Okay.
that comes where we're like, it's not working anymore. I don't get it. It's not happening for me. And I go, you're right there. You're right there. And we need to go back and we need to take a step back. We need to look at action from one small action item at a time. And if we can get over that hump of, I feel burnt out, I feel like it's not working, and we can work through that, very often we make it through the action phase into the maintenance phase. And when we're talking specifically about relationship with food, that awareness phase is really where it starts because that is where we start to notice the things that we didn't notice before. I've had patients say to me things like, I'll suggest something for them to eat, let's say a wrap or a sandwich. I don't like wraps and I don't like sandwiches. I'm like, okay, that's totally fine. And even if I've given them a recipe for a wrap or a sandwich and they go, I don't want this, but they get curious and they make the wrap or the sandwich and they go, oh, okay, well, and the reason why I didn't like that was because it reminded me of this in my life. And it
Really?
opens a lot of conversation, that
Wow.
immediate reaction of I don't want this, I don't like this, I'm not going to do this. And it could be anything, it's like, I never liked broccoli. I'm like, okay, that's fine. But then they get curious about it and they're like, well, why don't I like broccoli? What's the problem with
Right.
it? Maybe if I tried it a different way, would I like it better? And so again, that awareness is really where we start to root around in that relationship with food and where it starts to come up and actually support us in an action phase and really support us in the actions that we take. And now we're really become open-minded to the changes we want to make. And so this is all part of the process.
That's wonderful. So you mentioned
Yeah.
handing out recipes. So do you have a recipe book, or do you come up with just what makes sense for the person, and you put that together on a paper, and you're like, find a recipe where you have all those ingredients?
Yeah. So my patients can get some meal planning support from me.
Okay.
I give them access to a software that allows them to have support. I would say the meal planning process had 4 steps: plan, shop, prep, cook. This support will help you with plan and shop. So that you're just kind of left with prep and cook. And that's also where I can communicate with you any recipes that we talk about in session. If you're like, I need more smoothie recipes, I need more recipes for this and that, it's where I can easily very much communicate with you by just kind of sending you the recipes that are curious to you, relevant to you, but also where I can send you weekly meal plans and you can have that support in creating a system in your home. It's meant to help build out that system.
What's your own favorite recipe?
Okay. Oh my gosh, such a loaded question. I love to bake. I'm a big baker.
Okay. Okay.
So it's not necessarily a healthy recipe. But I love to bake and I love to, my favorite thing to bake is definitely challah for Shabbat, challah
It's so
bread.
good. Yeah, it's
Um,
so good. I get
um,
why. It's like a
I know,
brioche bread.
I
I mean,
know.
you can never get enough.
I know it's just my favorite thing to bake. It's like very cultural and just
Yeah.
whatever my weekly thing. But I also, it's the summer. So my favorite summer recipe, I do a watermelon salad and I put it out every single year as if it's my favorite recipe. I rarely repeat recipes when I put things out there like social
Right.
media, whatever, but the watermelon salad I have to put out every year. It's watermelon and cucumbers and jalapenos and pickled red onions. And you can put feta cheese in it if you want it to be dairy. And it has like a lime juice dressing, and it's so refreshing and delicious in the summer. And so, yeah.
And it's filling because
Oh,
watermelon
yeah.
is so filling. So instead of
Mhm.
having the traditional lettuce, why not put a little bit of summer in it?
Yep, yep. And
So
I love like putting it on yogurt
yeah,
or having it with chips, like pita
right, right.
chips or something. It's like really good.
Yeah. From my personal experience, I mean, I'm from Belgium, but my ethnic background is from Morocco. And I
Mhm.
used to love Moroccan food until I
Okay.
realized it was just like a full bottle of olive oil in every single dish. And I was like, I had to tell my grandma, look, you're the best chef in the world, I have to tell you, but this is just too much for me. And I slowed down on the heavy meals. But what I loved about it is very Mediterranean minded. So
Mhm,
you do have every
mhm.
possible vegetable type of meats. I used to eat a lot of veal, for example. Here we don't have a lot of that. Even rabbit and duck. The variety of meat. Sorry, it's not the same here. But I feel that I mean, I don't know if it's a good tip, but you spoke about challah bread, and I just feel that when you have the ethnic background, I want to ask you one last question because we are getting to the end of that podcast, and I want to leave everyone listening with this reflection. So many women spend years trying to fix their body, change their body, or control their body. If there is one message you wish every woman could carry with her after this conversation, what would it be?
That if that is how you feel, if there's this wanting to fix, change, control, that is such a good sign that seeking out support from a dietitian is going to really benefit you. It will change the way you relate to your body, that you want to pass down that to your kids. Or if you don't want to have kids, just for yourself and your own peace of mind. Nutrition care is for everyone. That's what makes it hard to market it. But that also is what makes it so, such a strong, no barrier to entry. Right. It's for everyone and anyone. And if you ever have those thoughts around wanting to fix, change, or control your body, it's a really good sign that you would benefit from nutrition care and nutrition support. And, us dietitians, we're waiting to work with you. So,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
wonderful. Tell us more about how we can get in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you go to my website, diningwithnature.com, is a great way to learn more about me and to get in touch with me. You can also go to my Instagram at diningwithnature. Feel free to DM me. I always like to hear from everybody. And if you're interested in, getting involved and working with us, you can also book that free 15-minute consultation. You can do that for my website. You can do that for my Instagram. And I'd love to hop on a call and hear your story.
Wonderful. And as usual,
Mhm.
I will be adding everything in the description down below. So make sure to connect with Aderet. And it was amazing having you here on the podcast
Thank you,
today.
Sarah.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much for being with us.
Yeah. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having me.